I had spent 4 glorious hours perfecting the holiday dinner. It wasn't just any meal, it was Christmas Eve. The house, a Victorian masterpiece nestled beneath ancient oaks, was filled with the intoxicating aroma of my classic beef Wellington. I had seasoned the pastry with a secret blend of herbs, a tradition my late husband, Arthur, had always insisted upon. If you are listening to this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from. The rich scent of truffles and thyme now mingled beautifully with the nostalgic pine fragrance of the towering Christmas tree. The dining table was set with painstaking care. I used the Royal Albert Old Country Roses china the set Arthur and I had received on our silver anniversary and laid out 5 crystal goblets. 5 because my youngest, Stephen, was bringing his new fiancée. 3 were sparkling for my 3 successful children, 1 for Stephen's guest, and 1 for me, Evelyn Monroe, at the head of the table. Every detail was an anchor to tradition, to family, to the 46 years of memories made within these walls. Everything was flawless, except for the empty place setting for my beloved granddaughter Olivia, who was currently on a solo backpacking adventure across the Greek Isles, the trip we had secretly planned together before my 79th birthday. The heavy oak front door was rarely used, but tonight, at precisely 7 o'clock, the historic brass knocker sounded a sharp, definitive rap. I smoothed the lapel of my deep sapphire velvet jacket and opened the door, a broad, practiced holiday smile fixed on my face. "Merry Christmas Eve, darlings." I greeted them, my voice full of the season's cheer. Marcus, my oldest, a 55-year-old corporate attorney whose hair was now more silver than black, entered first. His face, usually softened by the holiday, was rigid, etched with lines I didn't recognize. Charlotte, my daughter, followed. Still in her power suit, a crisp, pale blue that clashed with the festive garlands, she looked impatient, as if she'd been forced to reschedule an important meeting. She didn't offer a greeting, just a curt nod. Stephen, my youngest, came last. He wasn't accompanied by his fiancée, and he looked intensely uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes as he shut the door quietly behind him. No one carried a gift. No one wished me a Merry Christmas. "The house smells incredible, Mom," Stephen offered, his voice weak and apologetic. "Beef Wellington," I replied, the smile now feeling fragile like thin glass. "Your father's favorite." "I thought we could honor the tradition as we always do." Marcus cleared his throat, the sound a deliberate, professional interruption. "Mom, we need to talk before dinner. It's important." The formality in his tone, the way he squared his shoulders, assuming his boardroom posture, sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cool December air seeping through the door. It was the chill of a contract review, not a family gathering. "Of course," I said, gesturing toward the main living room, where the enormous tree glowed. "Would anyone care for a glass of vintage sherry first? I have the 68. "This isn't a social call, Mother," Charlotte said, her voice dry and clinical. She was a renowned vascular surgeon, and she had activated her difficult patient tone, the one she reserved for non-compliant individuals. I suddenly felt categorized as a problem to be analyzed and solved. We settled in the living room. They perched on the edge of the antique velvet sofa, stiff and ready for flight. I took my usual armchair, the one with the perfect view of the courtyard garden, now dormant under a light dusting of manufactured snow. "We have reached a consensus," Marcus began, his gaze steady and detached. "After careful review of your health records and living situation." "My health records?" I nearly interrupted. "You mean the mild ocular stroke I had 9 months ago, from which I have fully recovered?" Charlotte shook her head slowly. "Not fully, Mom. You have dexterity concerns and those little lapses in short-term memory that you may not be fully aware of. You're nearing 80. "I am perfectly aware of my faculties, Charlotte," I countered, my voice sharper than I intended. "I still drive. I still manage my own investment portfolio, which I might add is performing quite well. I just submitted the final manuscript for my historical novel, fully edited, just last month." "That, Mom, is precisely the issue," Marcus interjected, placing his hands flat on his knees. "These little hobbies are distracting you from focusing on your true priorities, your health. You are not as young as you think." At 79, every morning my knees reminded me of my age. Every evening, the profound silence of this 10,000 square foot house reminded me of my solitude. But I had adapted. I had persevered. I had found a burning purpose again in the 800 pages of the historical fiction novel I'd secretly worked on for the past 2 decades, a book that was meant to be my legacy. "We have located a suitable placement for you," Stephen finally spoke, his voice hushed with what sounded like a genuine, though misplaced, pity. "Cypress Glen. It's quite lovely, Mom. Professional nursing care. Engaging activities. People your own vintage." The words hung in the warm, rosemary-scented air like toxic fumes. I struggled to draw a breath. "You are intending to put me in an assisted living facility," I managed, the sound distant and strange to my own ears. "On Christmas Eve?" Marcus had the grace to look uncomfortable. "The timing is far from ideal, yes, but they had an immediate opening for a premium suite, and we all happen to be conveniently in town." "How incredibly efficient for you," I said, the words coated in ice. "It is entirely for your own safety, Mother," Charlotte insisted, her surgeon calm unwavering. "After that fall on the staircase last October, I tripped on a poorly secured Persian runner," I countered, "which I subsequently removed." "Mom!" Stephen leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "We are genuinely worried. You are alone in this huge house. What if something serious happens, and there's no immediate response?" I wanted to remind him that if they visited more than twice a year, perhaps I wouldn't be so frighteningly alone. I wanted to tell Charlotte that if she called me more than once a month, she might know I had joined a competitive bridge club and a literary analysis group. I wanted to ask Marcus if this sudden, overwhelming paternal concern had anything to do with the aggressive commercial developer who had been leaving million-dollar offers in my mailbox to purchase this historically significant property. But I looked at their faces, these formidable, successful adults who had once been the very core of my universe, and I saw the immovable, calculated decision already reflected in their eyes. My bag was likely already packed. Marcus still had the emergency key. "May I at least put the beef Wellington in the oven?" I asked quietly, my hand resting on the cane I resented but had learned to depend on since the stroke. Marcus glanced at the solid gold timepiece on his wrist. "We're expected at Cypress Glen by 8:30. They're holding the suite for you. We need to be on time." "I see," I announced, standing slowly and deliberately. "Then I suppose I should get my coat." As I moved toward the massive hall closet, my eyes caught a sliver of creamy parchment peeking out from beneath a leather-bound book on my writing desk. The letter from the Phoenix Literary Grant Committee. The letter informing me that my historical epic, The Cartographer's Shadow, published 6 months ago under the pseudonym E.V. Thorne, had not only garnered phenomenal critical acclaim but had been awarded the coveted Phoenix Grant, carrying a monetary prize of $10,500,000. The national announcement, the grand reveal of the mysterious author, was scheduled to air live on the national morning news, tomorrow, Christmas Day. I had planned to reveal my secret success over the beef Wellington dinner to stun my children with the news that their mother, old, fragile Evelyn Monroe, had finally achieved the lifelong dream she had never shared. Now, as I buttoned my imported wool coat with trembling but determined fingers, I decided to hold that secret a little longer. It was a secret weapon poised and ready. "I am ready," I announced, leaving the envelope exactly where it lay. The journey to Cypress Glen was conducted in icy silence. I sat rigid in the plush leather backseat of Marcus's luxury sedan, watching the festive Christmas decorations blur past the window, each twinkling, cheerful light a step further away from the ancestral home where I had intended to draw my final breath. Stephen sat beside me, occasionally patting my hand with a tentative, meaningless gesture that he probably considered reassurance. Charlotte followed in her own expensive, quiet car, ensuring a swift and clean getaway once the deed was sealed. Marcus parked beneath a grand porte-cochere, adorned with a sparse, almost half-hearted garland. The name Cypress Glen Assisted Living was etched in elegant, bronze script above the entrance, illuminated by soft, recessed lighting designed to suggest warmth and welcome. The effect was immediately undermined by the pervasive sterile scent of disinfectant and the institutional quiet efficiency that no amount of holiday cheer could truly disguise. A young woman with an overly practiced, genuine-seeming smile and a clipboard greeted us at the reception desk. Her name tag read Kayla. "Mrs. Monroe, we are so delighted to welcome you to Cypress Glen, especially on this special night," Kayla chirped. "We have a lovely Christmas Eve gathering happening in the community hall, if you'd like to join after we get you settled. I managed a polite, tight nod. Words were momentarily beyond my capacity. My children, however, had plenty to say. She needs a ground floor premium suite, Charlotte instructed, her voice cutting through the soft Christmas carols playing over the intercom. Her mobility is compromised, and stairs are a serious fall risk. Also, she is on several cardiac medications that require strict monitoring. I have brought her full medical file. Mom also values her privacy, Stephen added quickly, attempting to mitigate his sister's chillingly clinical assessment. Is there a room with a pleasant view, perhaps? Marcus remained silent, his expression a mask of efficient detachment as he handled the final financial paperwork, signing away portions of my life with a flourish of his expensive pen. I stood slightly apart from this swift, impersonal transaction, my life being rearranged without my input, without my voice. Through a set of heavy double doors, I could glimpse elderly residents gathered loosely around a large television screen. Some wore festive Santa hats. Others dozed in wheelchairs, their bodies frail and forgotten. Was this to be my new tribe? These strangers, united only by the fact that their families, like mine, had decided they were simply too inconvenient, too much of a liability to keep at home? Kayla led us down a long beige hallway to room 117. One of our nicest private singles, she sang, unlocking the door with a magnetic keycard she then handed to me. Mrs. Monroe, this is yours. Try not to misplace it now. Her tone, slightly too loud and sickeningly patronizing, made me wince. I had been a tenured literature professor for 30 years. I had commanded lecture halls of hundreds of students, published scholarly academic papers, and had secretly written a novel worthy of the Phoenix Grant. Yet here I was, being spoken to like a slightly dim, non-compliant child. The room itself was clean, impersonal, and deeply depressing. A single bed with a bland taupe coverlet, a functional dresser, a small television bolted to the wall, and a compact bathroom complete with safety rails that screamed of my supposedly precarious mortality. Someone had placed a small plastic poinsettia on the windowsill, the only acknowledgement that families across the nation were currently gathering in warmth and celebration, while I was being discarded like outdated furniture. Marcus placed my hastily packed antique leather suitcases by the dresser. The staff will help you unpack tomorrow morning, he said, still unwilling to meet my gaze. Charlotte was already examining the bathroom fixtures. The walk-in shower configuration is excellent, she called out. Infinitely safer than your old clawfoot tub at home. Stephen sat beside me on the edge of the bed, the thin mattress yielding beneath our combined weight. It's just until you're stronger, Mom, he whispered, his voice thin with guilt. We just want you to be completely safe. I looked at my youngest, the sensitive boy who had grown into a distracted, guilt-ridden man. Is that what you truly tell yourselves, Stephen? That this is purely about my safety? He flinched, and I immediately regretted the sudden sharpness in my tone. This wasn't Stephen's primary doing. Marcus was the ringleader, Charlotte his dependable second. Stephen merely followed, as he had since they were children. We should let you get settled now, Marcus announced, checking his watch yet again, a nervous habit that betrayed his profound discomfort. They're serving dinner in the dining hall soon. The goodbyes were blessedly brief. Awkward, hollow hugs, mumbled promises to visit soon, and assurances that I would come to absolutely adore it here. Then they were gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of Charlotte's expensive, antiseptic perfume and the hollow, damning echo of the closing door. I sat motionless on the edge of the bed, listening to the unfamiliar, lonely soundtrack of my new reality. Distant televisions, a medication cart squeaking down the tiled hall, the sound of a deep, hacking cough from a nearby suite. My painstakingly prepared beef Wellington would be cooling on the stove in my empty house. The Royal Albert china would remain unused. The thoughtfully wrapped, expensive gifts for my children would sit beneath the tree, unopened. Tears pressed hot behind my eyelids, but I refused to allow them to fall. I hadn't cried when Arthur died 5 years ago, maintaining a brave front for my children. I hadn't cried when the neurologist confirmed the stroke, focusing instead with grim determination on my recovery. I would not cry now, abandoned on Christmas Eve. Instead, I methodically unpacked one suitcase, a small, defiant act of normalcy. I arranged my toiletries in the tiny bathroom, placed the framed photograph of Olivia on the nightstand, and hung my silk robe on the back of the door. Small, ordinary acts that somehow made this sterile room infinitesimally more mine. When a staff member knocked, announcing dinner was being served, I declined politely. Food was utterly beyond me tonight. Instead, I changed into my nightgown, took my evening cardiac medications, and slipped beneath the unfamiliar, crisp sheets. Tomorrow was Christmas. Tomorrow, the world would learn about Evelyn Monroe, the 79-year-old first-time novelist who had captured the Phoenix Literary Grant. Tomorrow, my children would turn on their televisions and discover exactly what they had so casually and cruelly thrown away. The thought brought me not joy, but a hollow, intense ache where family love should have been. I woke disoriented, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar low ceiling and the pervasive antiseptic smell that was decidedly not home. The events of Christmas Eve rushed back with cruel, immediate clarity. My children, the assisted living, abandonment disguised as concerned intervention. The bedside clock read 7:25 a.m. Christmas morning. A gentle knock interrupted my sad reminiscence. "Good morning, Mrs. Monroe. Merry Christmas." A cheerful aide I hadn't met entered with a breakfast tray. Her name tag identified her as Denise. "Thought you might like breakfast in your room, being your first morning and all," Denise said kindly. Her genuine, unexpected warmth brought a lump to my throat. "Thank you, Denise. That is extraordinarily thoughtful." "Just doing my job, hun," she replied, setting the tray on a rolling table and positioning it over my lap. "We've got a wonderful Christmas program starting at 9 o'clock in the community hall. Carols, little gifts, maybe even a Santa for those with visiting grandkids." She glanced subtly around the empty room. "Your family coming by today?" I focused intently on buttering my toast. "I wouldn't anticipate so." Denise's expression softened with an understanding that made me want to pull the covers over my head. "Well, sometimes the holidays are complicated. But you won't be alone. We're all family here at Cypress." The platitude, though well-meant, grated against my raw, aching emotions. Family didn't discard you on Christmas Eve. Family didn't sign papers transferring responsibility for your care to strangers. "Would you like the television on while you eat?" Denise asked, interrupting my bitter thoughts. "The Christmas Day parade is starting soon." "Yes, thank you," I replied, profoundly grateful for the distraction. She turned on the modest, wall-mounted screen, found the National Parade broadcast, and adjusted the volume. "Just press your call button if you need anything, Mrs. Monroe. I'll come back for your tray in a bit." After she left, I nibbled half-heartedly at the breakfast while watching dancers and floats process down a sunny street somewhere far away. The forced, saccharine cheer of the commentators grated on my nerves, but the alternative was silence and my own torturous thoughts, far worse prospect. At 8:45 a.m., the parade coverage was abruptly interrupted by a special news bulletin. My heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "We are cutting away briefly for a highly exclusive interview," the host announced breathlessly. "Literature lovers have been speculating for weeks about the anonymous winner of this year's prestigious Phoenix Literary Grant. The award carries not only overwhelming critical acclaim, but an endowment of $10,500,000, one of the largest literary prizes ever awarded. This year's recipient has finally been revealed, and the story is truly remarkably inspiring." The screen cut to pre-recorded footage from last week. I was sitting in my living room, wearing my best tailored navy dress, looking far more composed than I had felt during the interview. The network makeup artist had performed miracles, minimizing my fine lines and age spots, giving me a dignified, almost ethereal glow that belied my 79 years. "Evelyn Monroe," the voiceover continued in a dramatic baritone, "a retired literature professor and widow, spent 2 decades secretly crafting her debut novel. The cartographers shadow the sweeping historical epic that has captured readers' imaginations and critics' praise worldwide." The camera zoomed in on my face as I answered the interviewer's question about my writing process. "I wrote mostly in the very early mornings before dawn," my recorded self explained, my voice calm and measured. "After my husband passed away, I discovered those quiet hours were when I could hear my characters' voices most clearly. For 20 years it was my secret garden, a world only I could enter. Sharing it now feels both terrifying and exhilarating." "And the $10,500,000 grant?" the interviewer prompted. "Any immediate plans for that unexpected, life-changing windfall?" My on-screen smile was gentle, genuine. I plan to establish a large-scale literacy and arts foundation for seniors. Reading and writing literally saved me from despair after widowhood. I want others to discover that same empowering lifeline. I paused, making eye contact with the lens. And of course, I have already set aside generous, separate trusts for my family, especially my brilliant granddaughter, Olivia, who encouraged me to submit the manuscript when I had nearly lost all nerve. I reached out and turned off the television, my hands shaking only slightly. By now, my children would be seeing this broadcast. Marcus, who religiously watched the morning business news with his first cup of coffee. Charlotte, who kept a small television in her kitchen for background noise while preparing breakfast for her own family. Stephen, who might still be asleep after the previous night's activities, but who would certainly be receiving frantic calls and texts from his siblings. Their mother, frail, cognitively compromised according to Charlotte's assessment, was now a celebrated, high-profile author and a multimillionaire. The inconvenient burden they had casually discarded at an assisted living facility was suddenly newsworthy, valuable, and certainly worth keeping around. My bitter, calculating thoughts were abruptly interrupted by a loud, escalating commotion in the hallway. I heard raised voices, the sound of hurried footsteps, and the unmistakable panicked inflection of my oldest son. "Ma'am, visiting hours don't start until 10 o'clock. You need to wait in the lounge. I am her son. This is a severe family emergency. Sir, please, you must sign in at reception." My door didn't just open, it burst inward. Marcus stood there, still wearing what appeared to be expensive silk pajama bottoms beneath his hastily donned coat, his hair uncombed, his eyes wild and unfocused. He looked less like a corporate attorney and more like a man who had just seen a ghost or a $10,500,000 check disappear. "Mom!" he gasped, breathing hard, leaning against the doorframe. "We just saw the interview. Why didn't you tell us? We need to get you home right away, immediately." Behind him, a flustered aide was calling softly for the security team. Over Marcus's shoulder, I could see Charlotte rushing down the hallway, still wearing her surgical scrubs and an overcoat, looking livid. Stephen trailed behind her like a lost, confused puppy. In that singular moment, looking at my oldest son's face, a face transformed by the sudden, profound knowledge of my newfound wealth, something crystallized within me. It was a clarity as sharp and cutting as broken glass. I straightened my spine, adjusted the beige institutional pillow behind me, and met his gaze directly. "Visiting hours start at 10 o'clock, Marcus," I stated calmly, my voice steady and surprisingly strong. "Please, I insist you respect the rules of my new home, the one you so carefully selected for my well-being just last night." Marcus's face cycled through a comical, rapid succession of emotions. Shock, confusion, quick calculation, and finally, a strained, sickly approximation of contrition. "Mom, there's been a truly terrible misunderstanding," he managed, lowering his voice drastically as a solidly built security officer, Mr. Davis, appeared quietly behind him. "We were deeply worried about you being alone, but obviously, we didn't possess all the relevant information. Mrs. Monroe, are these individuals causing you distress?" the security officer asked, directing his question to Miss Small, but powerful courtesy that did not escape my notice. "No, Mr. Davis," I explained, smoothing the coverlet across my lap. "These are my children, who appear to have forgotten the visiting hours they were clearly informed of last night." Charlotte pushed past Marcus, her doctor's authority evident in every line of her rigid posture. "We are her immediate family. Surely that grants some necessary flexibility with visiting hours, especially on Christmas morning." Mr. Davis remained unmoved. "Policy is policy, ma'am. If you'd like to wait in the visitors' lounge until 10 o'clock, you are welcome to do so." "This is utterly ridiculous," Charlotte scoffed. "Mother, tell them you want to see us now." All three of my children stared at me expectantly, their expressions a sickening blend of impatience and a newly discovered, desperate respect. Just yesterday, I had been an inconvenient burden, a liability to be managed. Today, with 10,500,000 reasons to reconsider, I was suddenly worthy of their undivided, frenetic attention. "I will see you all at 10 o'clock, I said quietly, deliberately. "I need to finish my breakfast and get properly dressed. The community hall will be an appropriate place to meet." Stephen, always the most sensitive to the emotional current, placed a restraining hand on Marcus's arm as he began to protest. "That's fair, Mom. We will wait. Please take all the time you need." After they retreated, their initial, desperate rush clearly thwarted, Denise returned to collect my breakfast tray. "Well, well," she said, her eyebrows raised in an expression of genuine, impressed curiosity. "Seems like you're the celebrity of Cypress Glen this morning, Mrs. Monroe. The nurses' station is absolutely buzzing about your interview." "News travels fast, Denise," I murmured, a dry humor returning to me. "And your family seems mighty eager to celebrate with you this morning." Her tone was carefully neutral, but her eyes held a profound, non-judgmental understanding. "Would you like some assistance getting ready for your visitors, Mrs. Monroe?" I nodded, suddenly exhausted by the morning's rapid, emotional events. As Denise helped me select an elegant cashmere sweater and slacks from my hastily packed suitcase, I found myself quickly explaining the situation. My secret writing career, the grant, and my children's calculated Christmas Eve ambush. $10,500,000, Denise whispered, shaking her head in amazement as she helped me with my supportive stockings. "And they genuinely didn't know when they brought you here?" "No," I confirmed. "I had planned to tell them over beef Wellington. The dinner I spent 4 hours preparing and never got to serve." Denise's expression hardened with a silent, fierce protectiveness. "Well, isn't that something? And now they're breaking down the door at 8 in the morning." She gave my shoulder a gentle pat. "You take all the time you need, Mrs. Monroe. I'll tell them you will be ready when you are ready." By 9:30 I was dressed, my silver hair arranged as neatly as possible, my lips touched with the pale rose lipstick I had worn for every special occasion since my teaching days. I made my way slowly toward the community hall, leaning a little more heavily on the cane than usual, my body feeling the intense emotional strain of the past 24 hours. The hall was festively decorated with an enormous, brightly lit Christmas tree, garlands, and small round tables set with red cloths. A few residents were already gathered, some watching a holiday movie, others reading quietly. In a corner, my 3 children sat rigidly, conspicuously out of place among the elderly residents and the bustling staff. Marcus spotted me first, rising instantly and crossing the room with his businesslike, ingratiating smile firmly in place. "Mom, you look absolutely wonderful," he said, bending to give my cheek a swift, shallow kiss. "Merry Christmas." Charlotte and Stephen followed, offering their own greetings with a strained, newfound warmth. I accepted their kisses and allowed Stephen to guide me into a plush, comfortable armchair, positioning myself strategically so that they were forced to sit facing me, the enormous, twinkling Christmas tree standing like a silent, accusing sentinel behind them. "I suppose congratulations are profoundly in order," Charlotte began, her voice carefully pitched for a semblance of privacy. "Your book, The Phoenix Grant. It's unbelievable, Mom. Why in the world did you keep such a triumph a secret?" "Would you have believed me, Charlotte?" I asked, simply meeting her gaze. "A 79-year-old woman writing a historical novel worthy of the Phoenix Grant? You barely believe I can live independently despite all evidence to the contrary." My directness created an immediate, thick, uncomfortable silence. Stephen was the first to break. "We were wrong, Mom," he said quietly, looking down at his hands, "about bringing you here. It was a serious mistake, and we are deeply sorry." Marcus nodded vigorously, all corporate composure gone. "Absolutely. A terrible, tragic error in judgment. We need to take you home immediately." I studied my oldest son, noting the quick calculation flashing behind his strained contrition. "And if there had been no grant money, Marcus? If I were simply your aging mother who wrote a book that nobody read, would it still have been such a profound mistake?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Mom, that's not fair. We were strictly concerned about your health situation." "My health situation hasn't changed since yesterday morning," I interrupted, my voice even. "Only my bank account has." Another silence fell, heavier and more damning than the first. Around us, gentle Christmas carols played softly, a cruel counterpoint to our fractured family tableau. An elderly gentleman in a wheelchair was helped to a nearby table by an aide, his trembling hand clutching a brightly wrapped package. Someone at least had family who had remembered him with a gift. "The money is not the important factor, Mother," Charlotte tried, her voice straining under pressure. We simply want you back home where you belong. Do I belong there? I asked simply. Last night, you were convinced I belonged exactly here. The silence was broken by a cultured voice behind me. Excuse me, are you Evelyn Monroe? The Evelyn Monroe. I turned to face a distinguished gentleman, Silas Prescott, who introduced himself as a retired senior history editor from the Clarendon Press. He had seen the broadcast. Your novel, The Cartographer's Shadow, is truly extraordinary. The committee made the only possible choice. He had read it twice and spoke about its masterful historical perspective. For the first time, I felt the pure joy of intellectual connection since Arthur's death. Denise, the aide, explained that Silas had specifically chosen Cypress Glen for its literary programs. My children watched, impatient and hostile. Marcus again insisted I be taken home, citing the facility's need for the suite. Silas intervened, praising the community and noting the speed of my efficient medical recovery. After a Christmas Eve admission, I would be genuinely honored to lead that book discussion, I told Silas, making an immediate, empowering decision. Perhaps in the new year. Mother, Charlotte hissed. I am saying that I am not leaving Cypress Glen today, I announced to my shocked children. I needed time to consider my options opened up by the $10,500,000 grant. I pointed out the hypocrisy. They insisted I was frail yesterday, yet today insisted I was perfectly capable. Only my bank account had changed. I deflected their persistent demands for lunch, stating I had plans with Silas. I then firmly announced I was expecting an important call from Olivia, my granddaughter, who knew about the book and had earned my confidence. My children departed, leaving behind hastily purchased, embarrassing gift bags. I joined Silas, who observed their remarkable timing. Positively miraculous, I agreed. Like Scrooge on Christmas morning. He called me Maggie and I allowed it. My phone rang. It was Olivia, calling frantically from Santorini, having seen the Phoenix Grant broadcast. She was ecstatic about the $10,500,000. But her mood shattered when a loudspeaker announcement confirmed her fear. Medication distribution will commence in 15 minutes. Grandma, where are you? They moved you on Christmas Eve. Her indignation was palpable. Those calculating materialistic. She immediately insisted on changing her flight to return. Don't you dare, Olivia, I said firmly. I assured her I was fine, had made a friend, Silas, and insisted she complete the trip we had planned together. She reluctantly agreed, promising to call daily. The following week was defined by my resolve. My children's daily calls were brief, non-committal, and heavy with thinly veiled inquiries about my finances. I simply told them I was adjusting. My new status as a wealthy, award-winning author changed everything at Cypress Glen. Staff became solicitous. The administrator rushed to install bookshelves. The distinction between respect for my intellect from Silas and respect for my wealth from the staff and children was stark and constant. Silas and I fell into an easy routine discussing life and literature. We reflected on the gamble of parenthood and the disappointment of watching children grow into people who prioritize materialism over familial loyalty. I admitted that Marcus was always materialistic, Charlotte overly clinical, and Stephen perpetually followed the path of least resistance. On New Year's Eve, Silas and I watched the countdown together. My resolution was to live deliberately. No more sacrificing my needs for people who fundamentally don't appreciate the sacrifice. Silas raised a toast to new beginnings. Olivia returned on January 2nd, bursting into room 117. She was angry that I was staying, believing I was punishing my children. I am not staying here to spite anyone, Olivia. I corrected her gently. I am staying because I need uninterrupted time to decide what I want. For the first time in decades, I possess the complete freedom to choose my own path. She accepted the profound logic of my statement. She then handed me the first installment check, $3,500,000. I told her 1/3 of the grant money would secure my independence, 1/3 would fund my foundation, and 1/3 would be split into trusts for her and her father/aunt/uncle. I emphasized that she earned her share by simply believing in me. Silas joined us, and he and Olivia immediately bonded over their shared literary knowledge. However, Olivia had a disturbing revelation. Dad's been meeting with real estate agents. He's discussing market value to sell the house. A cold, determined anger settled in my chest. Marcus was not only trying to discard me but to liquidate my primary asset without my knowledge, citing my health situation. This level of entitlement crossed an unforgivable line. I need to speak with an attorney, I told Olivia, and a financial advisor. Someone fierce and independent. Olivia immediately offered recommendations from her university professor, initiating the next essential phase of my independence. The following week was a flurry of discreet, necessary meetings held in the private dining room at Cypress Glen, which the administrator, Mr. Thompson, was only too happy to make available for the distinguished Mrs. Monroe. My newly acquired status as a wealthy, award-winning author opened every door that would have remained firmly closed to an ordinary resident. George Patel, the financial advisor recommended by Olivia's professor, reviewed my assets with professional, meticulous thoroughness. The Victorian house, worth considerably more than I had realized in the current surging market, Arthur's life insurance and our modest investment portfolio, my teaching pension, and now the massive Phoenix grant money and anticipated royalties. You are currently in an enviable, completely secure financial position, Mrs. Monroe, George concluded, organizing his papers meticulously. Particularly with the grant money. The question now is, what do you ultimately want to achieve? To secure my absolute independence, I said without a moment's hesitation, my voice firm. And to ensure that no one, not my children, not anyone, can ever make decisions for me again without my explicit, written consent. George nodded approvingly. A comprehensive living trust will be essential. We can structure it to support your needs beautifully, while rigorously protecting your assets from any undue influence or attempted leveraging. Meredith Jacobson, the elder law attorney who joined our second meeting, was a formidable woman in her mid-60s with a no-nonsense demeanor and a clear, fierce passion for protecting her clients. What your children did was absolutely reprehensible, she stated bluntly after hearing my full story. But unfortunately, it is not uncommon. Adult children frequently make unilateral decisions about their parents' care, particularly when financial interests align with those decisions. They had no legal right to place me here, did they? I confirmed, needing the absolute clarity of a legal expert. None whatsoever, Meredith agreed emphatically. You are fully competent. You have no legally appointed guardian or conservator, and a mild stroke in your distant medical history does not remotely justify institutional care without your explicit consent. The validation was surprisingly, overwhelmingly emotional. For a brief moment, I could not speak past the tightness in my throat. The paramount question now, Meredith continued gently, is what you want going forward. Do you want to immediately return to your home, find a completely new living situation, or perhaps stay here temporarily while we finalize your comprehensive estate protection? In the soft glow of early February sunlight, I sat on a bench in Cypress Glen's small frost-covered garden, watching a brave cardinal flit between snow-dusted branches. Silas occupied the space beside me, our shoulders nearly touching, a comfortable, companionable silence settling between us as we contemplated the winter landscape. 6 weeks had now passed since my children had abandoned me here. 6 transformative, decisive weeks of legal consultations, financial planning, and deep personal reflection. Meredith had helped me establish a robust living trust, a healthcare directive, and a comprehensive power of attorney that named Olivia, not her father or aunt or uncle, as my sole representative should I ever become truly incapacitated. George had meticulously structured my newfound wealth to support both my long-term needs and the literacy foundation I was establishing. The preliminary paperwork for the Evelyn Monroe Foundation for Senior Literary Arts was now proceeding smoothly through the necessary legal channels. "Penny for your thoughts, Maggie," Silas said, breaking our silence with his customary easy tone. I smiled faintly. "I believe they are worth considerably more these days, Silas." "Touché," he chuckled. "Allow me to rephrase. Would you care to share what is occupying that grant-winning mind of yours this morning?" I considered his question, watching my breath form small clouds in the crisp air. "I'm thinking deeply about choices, the ones made for us, the ones we finally make for ourselves, and how incredibly difficult it can be to distinguish between them." "Profound territory for a Thursday morning," he observed. "Any particular choices weighing heavily on you?" "I've made a firm decision about the house," I said, turning to face him directly. I'm selling it. His eyebrows rose slightly. That seems immensely significant. May I ask what led to the finality of that decision? It was never truly my home, I explained, the realization having crystallized during a recent therapy session. Another new development in my life, courtesy of Cypress Glen's surprisingly competent mental health services. It was where Arthur and I raised our family, but after he died, it became more mausoleum than sanctuary. I stayed solely because leaving seemed disloyal to his memory, not because the space brought me any joy. Silas nodded thoughtfully, his expression one of complete understanding. And now, where will this new freedom lead you? I found a lovely, airy condominium in that new development near the university campus, I informed him. It has 2 bedrooms, is on the main floor with a small garden terrace, and has excellent, discreet security. It is close enough to town for convenience, but private enough for uninterrupted writing. It sounds absolutely perfect, Maggie, he said, though I detected a note of something disappointment perhaps in his voice. It is also only 12 minutes from here, I added, watching his reaction carefully. For visiting purposes, he finished, his face instantly brightening with an open smile. Visiting purposes indeed, I confirmed. I would like that very much, Silas. A comfortable silence settled between us again, broken only by the Cardinal's occasional cheerful call. In the week since Christmas, our friendship had deepened into something neither of us had explicitly defined, but both clearly, profoundly valued. At our age, a formal romantic declaration seemed somehow both redundant and premature. We were far beyond youthful impulsivity, but also acutely, urgently aware of time's limited nature. My children are coming today, I said after a while. All of them plus Olivia. I've asked them to meet me in the conference room at noon. Silas reached for my gloved hand, giving it a gentle, reassuring squeeze. The moment of truth, then. How are you honestly feeling about it? Resolved, I said after careful consideration. Not angry anymore. Not even particularly hurt. Just absolutely clear about where we stand and how we will proceed from here. Would you like moral support? I could lurk menacingly in the hallway, glaring pointedly at them whenever they emerge. The mental image of the dignified, intellectual Silas Prescott lurking menacingly made me laugh genuinely. Thank you, but this is something I must do entirely alone, though perhaps we could have dinner afterward. I suspect I will be emotionally exhausted regardless of how it goes. It's a date, he confirmed, and neither of us pretended the word choice was merely casual. At precisely noon, I entered the small, private conference room where my children waited. Mr. Thompson, the administrator, had personally arranged the space at my specific request, a testament to the new level of courtesy extended to the suddenly valuable resident I had become. Marcus, Charlotte, and Stephen sat rigidly on one side of the large table, with Olivia seated opposite them, a clear physical manifestation of the emotional and ethical divide that had developed since Christmas Eve. Thank you all for taking the time to come, I began, taking the single designated seat at the head of the table. I genuinely appreciate you making the effort. Of course, Mom, Marcus replied immediately, forcing the ingratiating, professional smile he typically reserved for critical clients. You said this meeting was important. It is, I confirmed. I placed a thin, brown folder deliberately on the table directly before me. I have made several significant decisions about my future that affect all of you, and I wanted to communicate them clearly and definitively face to face. Charlotte leaned forward instantly, her perpetual medical concern creasing her brow. Is everything entirely all right, health-wise, Mother? My health is excellent, thank you, I stated, my voice even and steady. The same excellent health it was on Christmas Eve when you insisted I needed institutional care. The pointed reminder caused Charlotte to sit back sharply, instantly chastened. Stephen studied his hands, while Marcus attempted to maintain his impenetrable, professional facade. I have decided to sell the house, I continued, noting with grim satisfaction how Marcus's expression flickered with immediate, intense calculation. I have engaged a dedicated, independent realtor of my own choosing, and the proceeds will be directed entirely into my newly established trust. Your trust? Marcus couldn't fully hide his profound surprise and sudden concern. What trust are you referring to? The Evelyn Monroe Living Trust, Established last month with my attorney Meredith Jacobson. Olivia has graciously agreed to serve as the successor trustee should I ever become truly incapacitated. The bombshell landed with a satisfying, deafening impact. Marcus's face flushed an angry red. Charlotte's mouth tightened into a thin white line, and Stephen looked up with undisguised shock. That is unexpected, Mother, Marcus managed finally. Don't you think one of us would be inherently more appropriate, given our professional experience and proximity? After careful consideration, I said calmly, meeting his gaze. No, your professional experience didn't prevent you from making catastrophically poor decisions regarding my care. In fact, it seems to have significantly facilitated them. Mother, that is simply unfair. Charlotte protested, her voice rising slightly. We were acting solely out of concern for your well-being. Were you? I asked, leaning slightly forward. Or were you primarily concerned about the inconvenience I might quickly become if my health deteriorated, the potential burden on your time, your resources, and your peace of mind? Stephen, always the most susceptible to honesty, recognized the absolute futility of denial. We handled it badly, he admitted quietly. All of us. We should have discussed options with you, not ambushed you on Christmas Eve. Yes, you should have, I agreed. But you didn't. And while I genuinely appreciate the acknowledgement, it doesn't change what happened, or my present need to rigorously protect myself going forward. Protect yourself? Marcus scoffed, his incredulity giving way to indignation. From your own children. From anyone who views me as either a burdensome liability to be managed, or a valuable asset to be leveraged. I opened the folder and distributed individual copies of a single-page document. These are the key provisions of my trust and my expectations moving forward. I suggest you review them carefully. The document before my children was deliberately concise, a focused distillation of the comprehensive legal framework Meredith had helped me establish. It outlined the creation of my trust, Olivia's role as the successor trustee, and my explicit directives regarding all future care decisions. The final critical paragraph detailed my intentions for the $10,500,000 grant money, 1/3 to the Literacy Foundation, 1/3 invested to secure my perpetual independence, and 1/3 divided into separate, individually managed trusts for each of my 3 children and Olivia. You're still including us in your estate plan? Charlotte asked, genuine surprise evident as she processed the information. You are my children, I replied simply. That fact has not fundamentally changed despite recent events. Marcus scanned the document with practiced legal efficiency, his mind clearly racing through the figures. These individual trusts, they have conditions attached. They do, I nodded, utterly unsurprised by his primary focus on the financial aspects. You will each receive a set quarterly income from your respective trusts, but the principal remains fully intact until my death, at which point it transfers to you directly. And Olivia gets the exact same amount as each of us? Marcus couldn't quite keep the sharp, jealous edge from his voice. Olivia stiffened beside me, but I placed a gentle, restraining hand on her arm. Olivia gets the same amount because she has consistently demonstrated the character, loyalty, and sound judgment I hope to encourage in all of you. This isn't strictly about genetic proximity, Marcus. It is about recognizing and rewarding the values I hold dear, which apparently don't include family loyalty, Charlotte muttered bitterly. On the absolute contrary, I countered, my voice steady. Family loyalty is paramount, but it must flow actively in both directions. Loyalty is not abandoning your mother at a nursing home on Christmas Eve because her care has become inconvenient. And it is certainly not plotting to liquidate her home without her explicit knowledge or consent. Stephen's head snapped up, his gaze darting quickly to Marcus. You were planning to sell the house without telling Mom? Marcus's expression hardened, his last defense crumbling. I was merely exploring market options, Stephen. Given Mom's situation, downsizing simply made financial sense for everyone involved. My situation being that you believed I was broke, feeble, and rapidly declining, I clarified. How instantly that assessment changed when $10,500,000 entered the equation. An uncomfortable, final silence descended over the table. Olivia, who had remained remarkably restrained, finally spoke, her voice measured and mature. I think what Grandma is trying to convey is that trust, once profoundly broken, takes significant time and sustained effort to fully rebuild. This financial plan gives everyone an opportunity to do that, to establish a completely new relationship based on mutual respect and shared purpose, not on financial dependency or obligation. I smiled faintly at my granddaughter, profoundly proud of her insight and her poise. Exactly. I am not punishing you, I addressed my children. I am simply creating necessary boundaries that should have existed long ago. Where will you live if you are selling the house? Stephen asked, finally asking the first practical question that didn't directly revolve around money. I have purchased a lovely, light-filled condominium near the university campus, I informed them. It will be ready next month. Until then, I have decided to stay right here at Cypress Glen. By choice. Charlotte seemed genuinely unable to comprehend this decision. But you don't need this intense level of care. You said so yourself. I am not staying for the care, Charlotte, I explained. I am staying because I have found a profound sense of community here. People who value me for my mind and spirit, not for what I can tangibly provide or what I might potentially cost them. I didn't mention Silas specifically, though Olivia's knowing smile suggested she had observed more than I realized during her frequent visits. I would like to ask something concrete of each of you, I continued, shifting to the final critical phase of the conversation. A clear way forward, if you are genuinely willing to engage. They waited, varying degrees of weariness and cautious hope on their faces. Marcus, I would like you to serve on the board of the Evelyn Monroe Foundation. Your business acumen would be immensely valuable, and it might help you understand what I value beyond mere monetary worth. His expression registered surprise, followed by cautious, immediate interest. I would be honored to seriously consider it, Mom. Charlotte, I would like you to connect the foundation with your hospital's community outreach program. Our literacy initiatives for seniors could significantly benefit from a medical partnership, particularly for those with early cognitive challenges. She nodded slowly, professional engagement visibly overriding personal grievance. And Stephen, I hope you will contribute your academic perspective to our educational programs. Your experience with university outreach would be invaluable for the scholarship components. Of course, Mom, he agreed readily, always the most amenable to any form of reconciliation. This is not forgiveness, I clarified, meeting each of their eyes in turn, my voice firm but not aggressive. Not yet. But it is a genuine opportunity for all of us to build something truly worthwhile together, to find a new, authentic way of relating as adults with separate but interconnected lives. After they departed, subdued but not overtly hostile progress of a sort, Olivia lingered, her expression still troubled. Are you certain about staying here, Grandma? Even temporarily? After everything they did? I considered her question carefully. Cypress Glen was not my choice initially, but it has become one. The irony is certainly not lost on me that in trying to discard me, your father and his siblings actually gave me a profoundly unexpected gift. Freedom from the obligations and the suffocating patterns that had defined me for decades. Plus, there's Silas, Olivia added with the directness of youth and a knowing smile. I felt a warmth rise in my cheeks that had nothing to do with the overheated conference room. Yes, there is Silas. He makes you happy. It wasn't a question. It was an affirmation. He does, I confirmed. In a way I hadn't expected to experience again at my age. Olivia smiled, the final tension leaving her shoulders. Then I'm glad, even if the circumstances that brought you two together were absolutely awful. Life rarely delivers its most valuable gifts in the expected packaging, I observed. Sometimes the most transformative presents arrive looking exactly like disasters. Later that evening, as Silas and I shared a special dinner in the private dining room, courtesy extended by the increasingly solicitous administrator, I recounted the meeting with my children. Not quite the dramatic, thunderous confrontation one might expect from a grant-winning author, Silas remarked, his eyes twinkling. No disinheritance, no melodramatic pronouncements. Rather civilized, all things considered. Disappointingly so perhaps from a purely narrative standpoint, I agreed with a smile. But real life rarely provides the neat, perfect resolution that fiction demands. Speaking of resolutions, Silas set down his fork, his expression becoming suddenly serious. I've been considering my living situation as well. My heart quickened inexplicably. Oh, I've realized that while Cypress Glen certainly has its many charms, chief among them the remarkable company, it is fundamentally not where I want to spend my remaining years. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. I've been looking at the new condominiums in that development near the university. Specifically, the unit that recently sold to a distinguished author of my acquaintance. The unit next door, I whispered, hardly daring to believe what he was gently suggesting. He nodded, a clear question in his eyes. Too presumptuous? Not at all, Silas, I assured him, turning my hand to tightly clasp his. It seems that abandonment has led to the most unexpected discovery. And what is that discovery, Maggie? That even at 79, life can offer utterly new beginnings. That sometimes the worst day of your life being calculatedly discarded by your family on Christmas Eve and set in motion the best chapter you never dared to even imagine. Silas raised his water glass in a solemn toast. To unexpected gifts, and the courage to fully recognize them. To two unexpected gifts, I echoed, certain now that my children's betrayal, painful as it had been, had profoundly freed me to accept the most precious gift of all, the chance to write my own ending. The elegant Christmas tree in my new condominium stood brightly in the corner of the living room, its meticulously arranged lights reflecting in the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the bustling university campus. Unlike the modest pine I had decorated in silent solitude the year before, this tree sparkled with an eclectic, joyful collection of ornaments, some from my past, others newly acquired, each representing a piece of the remarkable year that had unfolded since my children had left me at Cypress Glen. More hot cider, Maggie? Silas asked, appearing from the kitchen with 2 steaming mugs. In the 11 months since we had moved into adjoining condominiums, with a discreetly installed, connecting door between our 2 living rooms, he had become as essential to my daily existence as breathing. Not quite husband, we had both decided that a formal marriage at our age seemed entirely unnecessary, but far more than a companion, a partner in every sense that truly mattered. Thank you, darling. I accepted the mug gratefully, inhaling the cinnamon-scented steam. Olivia just texted. Their flight landed, and they should be here in about an hour. Plenty of time to finish the final touches, Silas observed, glancing around at the domestic, warm transformation our space had undergone in preparation for Christmas Eve dinner. My substantial mahogany dining table, expanded with both leaves, dominated the living area. It was set for 9, with my best china and crystal salvaged from the sale of the Victorian house, now imbued with a new genuine purpose. The past year had been one of profound, exhilarating reinvention. The Evelyn Monroe Foundation for Senior Literary Arts had officially launched in March, already funding literacy programs for seniors in 4 states, and sponsoring a prestigious scholarship for older writers pursuing their first publication. I had completed my second novel, The Gilded Cage, a sharp, contemporary story about emotional reinvention in later life, and my publisher had enthusiastically accepted it for publication next fall. Silas had gently emerged from retirement to serve as the Foundation's senior literary advisor, bringing decades of editorial wisdom and industry connections that proved absolutely invaluable. My relationships with my children had evolved into something measured and unexpected. Not the uncritical closeness I had once craved, but a measured, respectful professional partnership based on clearer boundaries and shared purpose. Marcus had indeed joined the Foundation's board, bringing an unexpected dedication to our mission once he realized I was entirely serious about his involvement extending beyond mere financial oversight. Charlotte had connected us with her hospital's geriatric research program, resulting in an innovative initiative combining cognitive health and creative expression for seniors with early dementia. Stephen had helped establish crucial university partnerships that extended our educational reach far beyond what I had initially envisioned. None of these relationships had fully returned to their previous state. That was impossible after the profound breach of trust. But something new and arguably healthier had decisively emerged from the ruins of last Christmas. We spoke more honestly now, disagreed more openly, and paradoxically, understood each other better than we had when maintaining the polite fictions that had governed our interactions for decades. The doorbell chimed softly at precisely 5 o'clock. Olivia stood on the threshold, her kind boyfriend, Michael, beside her, both carrying brightly wrapped packages. "Merry Christmas, Grandma!" she exclaimed, embracing me fiercely before turning to Silas with equal affection. "The place looks absolutely amazing." "All Silas is doing," I admitted as we moved inside. "He apparently has hidden talents as an interior designer." "Merely an eye for beauty, Maggie," Silas demurred with a charming wink in my direction. "A necessary skill honed over decades of manuscript assessment." Olivia and Michael arranged their gifts beneath the tree, joining the thoughtful display already assembled. This year, unlike last, there would be genuine, heartfelt exchanges, not the hastily purchased gift shop items my children had offered in their shame. The simple act of gift-giving had been reclaimed from obligation and transformed into something meaningful again. My phone chimed with a text from Charlotte. "Running 20 minutes late. Thomas had a last-minute patient." Sorry. Thomas, Charlotte's husband and a pediatric surgeon, had been the most genuinely apologetic of the extended family after last year's debacle, having been completely unaware of the plan to move me to Cypress Glen until it was already executed. "Charlotte and Thomas are slightly delayed," I informed the others, "which gives us a perfect opportunity for something special before everyone arrives." I nodded to Silas, who retrieved 3 small gift bags from his condominium through our connecting door. "What's this?" Olivia asked as I handed her one of the bags. "I thought we were doing gifts after dinner." "These are preliminary gifts," I explained. "Something I wanted to share with just the two of you first." Olivia and Michael exchanged curious, delighted glances before carefully extracting the tissue paper from their bags. Inside each was a handsomely bound book with a simple, elegant cover. The Cartographer's Shadow Phoenix Grant Special Edition. "It's being released next month," I explained softly. "A special limited edition hardcover with the new afterword I wrote. The publisher sent me the very first advanced copies." I paused, suddenly overcome with emotion. "I wanted you to have the first ones personally signed." Olivia immediately opened her copy to the title page to find my inscription. "To Olivia, who believed first and without reservation. Your faith made everything possible. With infinite love, Grandma." Tears welled instantly in her eyes as she read the words. "I didn't do anything special, Grandma," she protested softly. "I just read your pages." "You saw me," I corrected her, my voice thick with emotion, "when no one else bothered to look. That made all the difference." The doorbell rang again, heralding the arrival of Stephen and his wife Laura. They entered with the slightly tentative air that still characterized our interactions, a carefulness born of regret and the ongoing difficult work of rebuilding trust. Robert and his wife Cynthia arrived next, followed shortly by Charlotte and Thomas. As everyone settled in the living room with glasses of fine wine or hot cider, I observed the gathering with a profound sense of surreality. 1 year ago tonight, these same people, minus Silas, had orchestrated my calculated removal to Cypress Glen. Now they sat in my beautiful new home, engaging in warm, polite conversation, complimenting the elegant decor, behaving for all the world like a normal, functional family celebrating Christmas Eve. But we were not the same family. Not really. The fundamental power dynamics had irrevocably shifted. And most importantly, I was no longer the accommodating matriarch grateful for whatever attention my busy children deigned to provide. I was Evelyn Monroe, award-winning author, committed philanthropist, woman of fiercely independent means and clear, unshakable boundaries. The difference was palpable in every interaction. When we gathered around the dining table for the holiday meal, a catered affair this year, my practical concession to convenience, I found myself reflecting on the extraordinarily different emotions I felt compared to last Christmas Eve. Then, I had been filled with nervous anticipation and secretive excitement. Now I felt a calm, deep certainty about my place in the world and within this reconfigured family structure. "Before we eat," I said, raising my glass of cider, "I would like to propose a toast." All eyes turned to me expectantly. "To unexpected journeys," I began, meeting Silas's gaze briefly before continuing. 1 year ago tonight, life took a turn none of us could have possibly anticipated. The path has been difficult at times, and profoundly illuminating at others. But I find myself at 80 years old, more fully alive than I've been in decades. I paused, looking slowly at each face around the table. My children with their complex mix of enduring guilt and reconciliation, their spouses with their varying degrees of discomfort and acceptance, Olivia with her pure, unabashed pride. Silas with his steady, unwavering love. I've learned that sometimes what feels like an ending is merely a painful, but absolutely necessary, transition to a new chapter. That sometimes people must disappoint us profoundly before authentic, real relationships can finally emerge. And that it is never too late to rewrite your own story. Silence held for a brief moment as my words settled over the gathering. Then Olivia immediately raised her glass. To Grandma and second chapters. To second chapters, everyone chorused, the phrase carrying distinctly different significance for each person at the table. As we enjoyed our meal, conversation flowed more naturally than I had dared hope. Marcus shared updates about the Foundation's expanding initiatives. Charlotte described a new research project combining creative writing therapy with traditional treatment for elderly depression. Stephen discussed the university's interest in documenting the Foundation's work as a national model. After dinner, as we gathered around the tree for the gift exchange, I found myself standing slightly apart, watching this warm tableau of family connection with the clear perspective of both participant and detached observer. Silas joined me, his hand finding mine with the easy, natural familiarity we had developed. "Penny for your thoughts, Maggie," he murmured. "I was just thinking about last Christmas Eve," I admitted quietly. "How sometimes the worst, most painful moments can lead to the most unexpected blessings. Like being abandoned at Cypress Glen only to find a captive, highly intelligent audience for your literary opinions," he suggested with the dry humor I had come to cherish. "Like being forced to stand entirely on my own just long enough to realize I didn't need the fragile supports I've been clinging to," I corrected gently. "Like discovering that family can be fundamentally redefined at any age. Like meeting you." His fingers tightened around mine. "The best Christmas gift I ever received, Maggie. Finding you amid all that institutional beige." Olivia approached, interrupting our moment with an apologetic smile. "Sorry to intrude, but there's a small package for you, Grandma. It just arrived by courier." She handed me a small, elegantly wrapped box with no card or identification beyond my name and address. Curious, I unwrapped it carefully to find a velvet jewelry box. Inside, nestled against dark satin, was a delicate silver fountain pen, finely engraved with a simple message, to him. "Your story continues. Keep writing." "Who's it from?" Olivia asked, peering at the pen. I examined the box again, finding a tiny card I had initially overlooked. The message, written in a flowing, distinctive hand I recognized immediately, read simply, "From one writer to another with profound admiration. MC. Marcus Chun," I breathed, understanding dawning. My publisher had mentioned that the renowned, reclusive historical author had selected the cartographer's shadow for her prestigious book club, but I had no idea she had taken such a personal interest. "The Marcus Chun?" Silas asked, visibly impressed. "He almost never sends personal gifts to other authors. He's famously private." "Apparently he's made an exception," I said, touched beyond words by this gesture of professional recognition from an author I had long admired. As I carefully returned the pen to its box, I was struck by the perfect, elegant symmetry of the moment. 1 year ago, I had sat alone in a sterile temporary room at Cypress Glen, abandoned by family, my meticulously prepared Christmas dinner uneaten, my planned revelation of literary success thwarted. Tonight I stood in a beautiful home of my choosing, surrounded by family relationships in various stages of repair. My success was not just revealed, but celebrated, with a token of professional recognition from a literary idol now held gently in my hands. The path between those 2 Christmas Eves had been neither straight nor easy, but as I rejoined the gathering, Silas's steady presence beside me, I felt a profound, overwhelming gratitude for the entire journey. My children had given me what they claimed was for my own good that night, institutional care I didn't need or want. But life, with its infinite capacity for irony and redemption, had transformed their abandonment into the unexpected gift of genuine independence, creative fulfillment, and even late-life love. "Everyone say Merry Christmas," Olivia directed, raising her camera. "Merry Christmas," we chorused. And as the flash captured the moment, I thought, yes, it truly is.